The lie about friendships. Do you genuinely think that your companions would remain by your side if you were to lose everything today? Not your appearance, not your status, not your wealth, connections, or influence. I'm referring to losing everything. That makes you valuable and observing who actually stays. The truth will be more painful than you imagine. We exist in a society that glorifies loyalty but operates on self-interest. You've been taught to believe that friendships are maintained by affection, shared history, or memories. That all you need to do is be a good person, be there in tough times, and the rest will follow as a reward. But this is a narrative promoted by movies, books, and romantic advisors. The reality is harsher and more powerful. People don't stay out of love, they stay because you fulfill a purpose. Want proof? Reflect on how many close friends you've had who vanished when you had nothing left to offer. Think about the times when you were down, invisible, with nothing to give, and how many messages you received. This is the harsh truth of human relationships. Usefulness. This isn't about bitterness, it's about clarity. The most respected individuals in the world don't expect blind loyalty. They build networks based on exchanges of power, mutual value, and influence. While the weak wait for noble gestures, the strong learn to be indispensable. And being indispensable isn't luck, it's strategy. From a young age, you were taught to believe in social fairy tales. Phrases like, "A friend is forever," "Those who have friends have everything," or "True friendship is priceless," were repeated like mantras in movies, books, and even in schools. Hollywood taught you that friendships can endure time, distance, and even the worst crises, all without demanding anything in return. But this romantic vision is not only false, it is dangerous. The more you believe in it, the more vulnerable you become to the real dynamics of social power. Think about the series that have marked generations, like Friends, which sells the idea of an eternally united group where no one abandons anyone, where the unemployed, the lost, or the emotionally unstable are welcomed without judgment. But what no one tells you is that outside of fiction, bonds that do not deliver value are quickly discarded. Permanence in the real world is not fueled by history, it is fueled by relevance. Psychology confirms this with brutal clarity. A little-known experiment called invisible utility revealed that by artificially diminishing a person's contribution within a group, the perception of their importance and affection also decreased, even among close friends. In other words, the less useful you seem to be, the less you are remembered, loved, and defended. The past doesn't matter. The present does. The irony is that this conditioning is intentional. The sentimental culture you consume has been shaped to keep you docile, expecting emotional rewards instead of building real power, expecting the other person to stay out of love instead of understanding that people stay because they need to, not because they feel it. That's why, when you stop pleasing, helping, or serving, some people disappear. The truth that no one wants to tell is that the bond that sustains human relationships is rarely emotional. It's functional. The lack of loyalty you felt was not a moral failing on the other person's part. It was a strategic failure on your part. And here is the contradiction that hurts the most. The more you give yourself, expecting unconditional affection, the more you feed a structure of dependency that makes you invisible as soon as the value is exhausted. The loyalty you expect is not a debt. It is an illusion. But there is another path. A path where you do not beg for permanence but build presence based on something no one dares to give up. The real reason, people. Stay, you are not loved. You are needed. And that changes everything. What keeps you in relationships is not the intensity of what they feel for you, but the intensity of what you offer. Human beings are by nature social strategists. They stay where there is an advantage, even if unconsciously. The idea that people stay because they like you is a half-truth, and half-truths are the most effective lies. Think about any social group in high school. The popular kids were surrounded by people not because they were nice, but because they were socially valuable. They validated, influenced, and opened doors. In the adult world, the standard only gets more refined. Access, status, contacts, decision-making power. When you become a bridge to something people want, be it security, connection, visibility, or resources, you become indispensable. But when that value is exhausted or surpassed by another source, you become obsolete. And like any tool that no longer serves, you are discarded. Philosopher Ayn Rand once said that friendship is the expression of shared values. But the truth is even more stark. Friendship, more often than not, is a reflection of aligned interests rather than pure ideals. It's a transaction dressed in the warmth of familiarity. That's why we witness unbreakable alliances between moguls, politicians, and influential creatives, people who might not even like one another on a personal level. Their bond is not rooted in affection, but in purpose, influence, leverage, relevance. They stand together because being together serves them, and the moment it doesn't, they drift apart like strangers. This isn't cynicism, it's realism. Friendships, even decades-long ones, have an expiry date when one side loses power. The public eye has seen this pattern countless times. Celebrity hits a scandal, goes bankrupt, or simply loses the spotlight. And suddenly, the laughter fades, the calls stop, and the entourage vanishes. The once vibrant applause becomes an echo. The hugs, once warm, become absent. Not necessarily out of betrayal, but because the dynamic has changed. You're no longer a key player. You're no longer part of the machinery. When people disappear, they're not being cruel, they're recalculating. You've lost your strategic value in their personal ecosystem. And in a world driven by gain, no one stays where there's no return. This is the uncomfortable but liberating truth about many human connections. They are rarely unconditional. They are often based on what you bring to the table. So the real question is, what happens when you no longer do? Robert Greene, in his seminal book The 48 Laws of Power, delivers a hard truth. It is dangerous to appear without worth. That danger isn't just external. It seeps into the way others feel about you. When you no longer offer emotional, social, or strategic value, your relevance begins to erode. Not just in conversations, but in memory. Slowly, subtly, people recalibrate your importance. They stop returning messages. Invitations dwindle. It's not hatred, it's logic. People are not inherently malicious. They're instinctively selective. Greene's lesson aligns perfectly with Machiavelli's famous assertion, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." And that fear isn't terror. It's apprehension about losing access to something vital. Fear, in this sense, is tied to scarcity and need. When you are constantly useful, endlessly available, and offer yourself without limit, your presence becomes diluted. You turn into wallpaper, familiar, visible, and ignored. But when you offer high value and do so selectively, you become a force. Scarcity amplifies importance. Those who are rare and valuable are not just respected. They are protected. They hold influence without saying a word. That's why the truly powerful don't clamor for attention. They control the room with their absence as much as their presence. If you're always around, you're replaceable. But if you're strategic, if you're scarce yet essential, you become someone people fear losing. And in a world driven by leverage, fear of loss is a currency far more potent than affection. Be respected not for being there, but for being irreplaceable when you are. Now, pause and really think. What is your actual value in the lives of those around you? Strip away sentimentality, remove illusions, and ask, what do you uniquely bring to the table that others can't? The mistake so many make is believing that being liked is enough. It's not. Being liked is easy. It's being needed that changes the game. Being liked earns you company, but being needed earns you influence. And in this pursuit, there's a dangerous trap, mistaking neediness for kindness. You've probably seen it. A person who does everything for everyone, yet is barely acknowledged. Their messages are left on read. Their efforts go unnoticed. Why? Because excessive giving, without intelligent positioning, signals desperation, not value. When you overgive without boundaries, people stop seeing you as generous. They start seeing you as expendable. You become the human equivalent of background noise, always there, rarely appreciated. The truth is that people don't respect what's always available. They respect what's rare, what's hard to access, what feels exclusive. Think of a diamond. Yes, it's beautiful, but its beauty isn't what makes it valuable. It's the rarity, the limited availability. Human relationships follow this exact logic. This doesn't mean becoming cold or manipulative. It means being intentional. Real bonds aren't built on blind giving. They're built on mutual elevation. Loyalty isn't random. It's earned through reciprocal value. So stop trying to prove your worth through over-delivery. The goal isn't to be loved endlessly. It's to be needed so deeply that your absence causes a shift. That's real power. And if you're now thinking, so I have to be someone who constantly delivers value to everyone around me? Yes, but not in the way you've been taught. This isn't about burning yourself out trying to be everything to everyone. It's not about constant performance or exhausting productivity. It's about becoming something specific, something unique. Not just a person who gives, but a person who cannot be replaced. There's a fundamental difference. When your presence creates emotional depth, intellectual stimulation, or social momentum that no one else can replicate, you don't need to shout your worth. People feel it. You occupy a space so distinctly that your absence becomes noticeable. And that's where your power lives. Because here's the psychological twist. The fear of losing something rare is a much stronger motivator than the desire to gain something common. That's the reason people chase exclusivity. They want what feels irreplaceable. So instead of being everywhere, be strategic about where you show up, when and how. Deliver selectively, but impactfully. Speak less, but say more. Be seen less, but remembered more. You don't have to always be present. You just have to make your presence meaningful. That's how emotional gravity works. And once people start to associate your name with clarity, with energy, with transformation, they begin to rely on it. That's how you become necessary. Not by doing more, but by being more. So the mission isn't to constantly serve. It's to craft a position in people's lives where your absence would create discomfort, even fear. Become irreplaceable. If we accept that the world is structured around usefulness, then the most critical question you can ask yourself is this: how do I become irreplaceable? Not impressive, not pleasant, irreplaceable. Because being good, generous, or consistent isn't rare. The world is full of people who are kind and capable, yet still overlooked. Why? Because those qualities, while admirable, are not exclusive. To truly rise, to earn gravity in people's lives, you must offer something they can't find elsewhere. That uniqueness could be emotional insight, strategic clarity, raw honesty, or a blend of qualities that sets you apart. The key principle here is selective scarcity. Many fall into the trap of over-availability, thinking that constant giving earns loyalty. It doesn't. In reality, people begin to devalue what they see too often. Familiarity breeds invisibility, but when you hold back, when you give strategically, not endlessly, your actions carry more weight. Your words are remembered. Your presence, when it arrives, shifts the room. That is impact. And neuroscience backs it. The human brain is wired to place higher value on what it fears losing. So becoming irreplaceable isn't about working harder, it's about showing up smarter. Don't just offer value, time it. Don't just speak, resonate. The goal is not to be the loudest or the most available, but the most essential. Because when people begin to associate you with things they cannot easily replace, they start adjusting their lives to keep you close. That's when influence turns into permanence. That's when you stop being optional. Benjamin Franklin once discovered a peculiar truth about human psychology that still applies today. He noticed that asking someone who disliked him for a small favor, like borrowing a book, actually caused them to start liking him more. It sounds counterintuitive, but it reveals something powerful. When people invest in you, even slightly, they unconsciously start justifying that investment by assigning you value. This is known as the Ben Franklin effect, and it proves that utility can lead to connection. People often believe they must constantly give in order to be valued, but sometimes allowing others to contribute to your success is even more effective. When someone feels like they're helping you grow or succeed, they start to see you as an extension of their own effort. The bond becomes deeper, not because of what you gave, but because of what they gave to you. This is reciprocal utility, and it creates emotional equity. What's fascinating is that your value doesn't always need to be loud or tangible. Sometimes the mere feeling that a person improves simply by being around you is enough. It's not about being flashy, it's about being felt. Subtle emotional returns, strategic empowerment, and silent growth are often more potent than grand gestures. Relationships are not just about what's visible. They're built on the invisible contracts of mutual benefit. So instead of proving your worth through endless action, start recognizing the power of shared contribution. Sometimes being the person others want to support is more valuable than being the one who always supports. Another underutilized yet transformative tool is mastering the social narrative. The unspoken story people tell themselves about who you are. Being competent isn't enough. Being memorable is what gives you staying power. You could be the most effective person in the room, but if your presence doesn't carry symbolism, if it doesn't stand for something, people will forget you. This is where positioning, language, and image come into play. What do people associate with you? Confidence, clarity, boldness, vision? You don't need to be the wealthiest or most influential. You need to be the one who represents something rare. Those who embody an archetype, like the challenger, the visionary, or the elegant provocateur, become reference points. And reference points don't get replaced easily. But here's the real shift. Stop seeking relationships built on unconditional love. Aim instead for relationships rooted in unconditional value. That doesn't mean being transactional or cold. It means being aware. Give your energy where there is mutual growth, where the relationship expands both your worlds. You deserve to be in circles where your presence enhances the environment and theirs enhances yours. This is not manipulation. It's conscious selection. Clarity strengthens connection. When both parties know what they bring and why they matter, bonds don't weaken. They solidify. Want to leave a lasting impact? Make people associate your presence with transformation, Want to be remembered? Be the reason someone feels stronger, smarter, or more capable. In the end, people don't remember what you said or did. They remember how you changed their sense of themselves. Do you truly want to be remembered? Then stop focusing on being liked and start mastering the art of being felt, of leaving behind an emotional footprint every time you enter or exit a room. Make people feel like something changes when you show up. Something shifts, elevates, sharpens. That's how respect is built. Not through constant praise, but through perceived loss. If your presence brings insight, energy, clarity, or direction, your absence becomes too expensive to afford. That's the core truth. People don't fear losing what's common. They fear losing what is rare and essential. And that's what you must become. Don't chase visibility. Don't try to please everyone. Instead, study what makes you distinct, what you alone bring. Then protect it. Be unpredictable, not inconsistent. Be scarce, but never irrelevant. Predictability breeds comfort, but it rarely breeds reverence. If you want to be indispensable, you must stop being ordinary. In every interaction, ask, what value did I just add that no one else could? That's your leverage. Your presence should feel like a solution, your absence like a gap. In the end, people don't just miss the people they love, they miss the ones they need. The shift happens the moment you stop proving your worth and start embodying it. Calmly, powerfully, without explanation. Make your presence a rare currency. Be the difference that others silently measure against. Because once you become impossible to replace, you'll no longer have to ask for loyalty, respect, or remembrance. They'll be offered freely, because losing you will feel like losing something essential.